This is Mrs. Croteau assisting some of the students who are maybe a little bit behind on their spice writing. So many kids came into the class from different places, and so with that, a lot of students were in different spots with this writing assignment. And if you're watching this video, what I'm guessing is you're needing just a little extra support on your second paragraph. Everyone in the class should be done with paragraph 1 because some of you worked on this with me, some of you worked on this with your old teacher, and some of you just worked on this last week, this section here, with Mrs. Yamamoto. Now, if you're seeing this note taker and it doesn't look familiar to you, that's because this was the note taker used in Mrs. Yamamoto's group. However, if you are working on this today, and you don't have this note taker, you can still follow these directions. You are just using whatever note taker you have. That was the complicated part because we're all coming from different places. With different teachers, you use different items. So don't panic if you're confused about why you don't have this note taker. Our end goal is the same though today, that we want to work on our trade and business paragraph. In this section, we need 4 sentences. A big idea sentence about trade and business basically introduces the topic of the a topic of the paragraph, excuse me. Then we've got 3 evidence sentences. Evidence comes from the text. That's where we're finding it. However, we want you to paraphrase. That means to take what we find in the text and to put it into your words. Say it in your way. So yes, it's coming from the source, but it is still your version of their words. So 4 total sentences that we're looking for. But before we do that, it's important to probably revisit the text. Now, some students are using just one source. We've made it a little bit simpler for you if we're noticing you're having some trouble. Some of you are using 2. If you are using 2 sources, then you want to make sure this evidence is coming from Why Salt or from Life of Spice. I mean, from both is what I meant to say. You want to have it from both, a mixture. Personally, I'd probably pick 2 evidence sentences from Life of Spice because that's a better article. It's way more information. And then I'd probably have 1 that was from Why Salt. If you're from Mrs. Yamamoto's group and you're using this note taker, you're just working with the Why Spice article or Life of Spice article. I keep mixing up the names, goodness gracious. Okay, so you're just working with that Spice article. If you were with Mrs. Yamamoto and used this note taker. Today I'm focusing only on that evidence from the Life of Spice. So the article you read was this one. And with Mrs. Yamamoto, you already marked it up with the used facts, which my understanding is you guys did that in blue. As you can see here, your goal was to follow along with Mrs. Yamamoto and to copy what she had. I noticed some students did that and some did not. If you did not, now's a great time to catch up though, because it's going to be displayed here. We already did those facts, so now our focus when reading is to look for the facts about trade and business, because our prompt asks us to write a paragraph about uses, about trade and business, and about power. However, we are only having some of the students write all 3 because we want to tailor it for your needs. So some of you might only be doing these 2 paragraphs. And if you're watching this video, I'm guessing you're only going to do these 2. That's why this one got crossed off. We're only going to focus here and here, and we're halfway there because you already did uses. So that's awesome. So your job is, as I do this, I kind of want you to follow with me. It's a lot harder, I know, when, you're probably watching this screen and then you'd have to stop, go to OneNote, do it yourself. That's fine. That's what I want you to do. Or watch it once all the way through and then go onto your OneNote and do it with me the second time. Okay? You can also just do it as we go since you've read this article a couple times already. You'll just want to pause the video, stop, highlight, continue the video, back and forth. The nice news is if you follow with me, you're going to get all the pieces of evidence you need. Obviously, we're going to have to move them over to that page we were using, though. Let me find it. Yes, this one here. We'll have to move that here. We'll have to put it in our words, but we'll already have a lot of it. So that's why we really want to make sure we're following along with me today, okay? So let me zoom in on this. All right, here we go. Okay, so trade and business. Remember, trade is to exchange items. Usually in the old days, things were not just paid for with coins. Like there was a lot of trading. There's also a lot of trading that still happens today where, it would be as simple as, to simplify it a bit, I have this red pull, and you have this pen. Let's exchange. We're not going to pay each other money. We're going to trade it back and forth because it's beneficial for both of us, right? Obviously, they weren't trading this stuff, but hopefully you get the point. Business is anything where, there's maybe a small business that's selling food or selling silk or selling spices. Somebody that sells something or produces a product, or maybe they have people that work for them that trade spices, right? So it could be any number of business ventures. So we're focusing there. We're not focusing on uses anymore. We're focusing on how are spices traded, what kinds of businesses happened around spices, etc. But we're going to read the whole thing again. So, okay. People have used spices since the beginning of history. Archaeologists have found spices in the tombs of Egyptians buried around 3000 BCE. What were spices doing in burial chambers, you might ask? After all, it's reasonable to assume that no one was cooking dinner in those tombs. I hope not. But the ancient Egyptians had a different use for spices. They used various kinds, including cinnamon, to embalm or preserve bodies after death. It looks like you guys already talked about some of these words. Chamber is the same thing as a room. Burial is to put somebody that has died into the ground so that they have a resting place, a final resting place, though it's not always the ground. In old days, there were lots of different ways that people were buried and such. Could be things like a tomb, right? Like the ancient Egyptians buried people in tombs. Well, people that were wealthy. It's just a way of treating the body after death. Embalm, same thing. They didn't want the body to rot in ancient Egypt, so they treated it with spices, basically. And then hieroglyphics, I know Mrs. Yamamoto showed you those, are like a form of ancient Egyptian writing. I haven't heard anything about trade or business yet, though. Just more about how they were used. So the Egyptians believed this might please their gods, who would then give the dead a happy afterlife. Spices also appear in hieroglyphics. That's that word here, right? An ancient form of writing carved into Egyptian pyramids. Sorry, I keep messing up. It's really late. So I'm a little tired. That's why I'm drinking this. I shouldn't drink it so late, but it's been a long day. So the hieroglyphics show workers who built the pyramids eating onions and garlic. The Egyptians believed these herbs gave the workers strength. They needed all the strength they could get since they had to move giant pyramid stones through the blazing desert. So I'm guessing that some of the time that the pyramids were made, it was either probably by slaves or it could be business owners, but it's not telling us directly enough here. And so, and also it has nothing to really do with spices, just that they were eating them. Well, they made the pyramids. So I don't really think that one's relevant. So we're going to move on. So far, I don't actually have anything marked with yellow, and that's okay. All right. Still looking for trade and business. In the ancient Olympic Games, which took place from 776 BCE to 394 CE, athletes were rewarded with crowns made of plants, including spices such as bay leaves or myrtle. So those are just types of spices, basically. That's a plant. Some ancient Greek and Roman scientists, including Hippocrates, Galen, and Pliny, believed that spices had healing properties. These ancient scientists might have been onto something. Today, scientists have tested whether medicines made from spices, such as turmeric, cinnamon, oregano, and sage, might be able to treat conditions such as Alzheimer's disease and high cholesterol. So this is modern day here, and it's still kind of a use. It sounds like they're kind of experimenting and testing it, but we still aren't seeing anything that's directly saying, oh yes, this is something that was traded between scientists, or this is something they were selling. Sounds more like they were experimenting than they were selling at this point. So, still moving on. All right. In ancient times, almost all spices came from Asia. Demand for spices in other parts of the world led to a booming spice trade. I hear that word, trade. So, I think actually it could be good to say something about this because they're saying almost all spices came from Asia. So that's kind of an interesting fact about trade and business, and that other parts of the world were the ones who were really demanding it. So that means that if they're saying it had a booming spice trade, that means it was very successful for the Asian countries that were trading and selling spices. So we could actually kind of use this as the same fact. Demand for spices in other parts of the world led to a booming spice trade. If we were to pick this fact, I'd say these probably would go together, and then we just, we wanted to rephrase it to simplify it a bit. At first, all trade again, involved making a grueling, that means very hard, trip over land routes with a caravan, it's a long line of travelers, of camels to carry the spices. Okay, so we could talk about trade involved, and remember when we are highlighting, you don't have to have every single word. Mrs. Yamamoto seemed to highlight the entire sentence. You don't actually have to do that. You can highlight some key information, or you can highlight the whole sentence. It really depends on what you think you need for your notes. So I would say trade involved making a grueling trip, I'd say overland routes. I would also mention caravan of camels, and they carried the spice. Pretty much everything. I just sometimes leave out some of these kind of connector words because we're going to probably rephrase those anyway. So I want to get kind of my big ideas. Okay, now I'd say I have like two. This is one fact here. This is probably my second because they're all in one sentence here, and these two go together. So that's why I only have two. And remember, when I'm writing, I'm going to need three. See, evidence 1, 2, 3. These things we are highlighting are our pieces of evidence. We just have to rephrase. Okay, I need to keep going. The most famous of these routes was the Silk Road, which connected Asia with the Mediterranean world, including Europe and North Africa. So in the picture here, you see the Silk Road, and it connects all these different places, both by land and sea, that sort of help the trade move from mostly this area here in Asia to these other places in the Middle East and over all the way over to Europe. Look how far that goes. The Silk Road is so famous that really we probably should say something about it. I mean, it says the most famous. So let's see. Most famous of these routes was the Silk Road. We could say where, like we could tell where it was connected, but I'd probably, if I was paraphrasing this, I'd probably say which connected Asia with, and then instead of listing all of these, I'd probably say many parts of the world or other areas of trade or something like that. That's a way you could paraphrase without saying every single thing that was listed here. So I'm going to just put little dots on that or little lines because we do want to include that it's connecting Asia to other places, but I bet we could rephrase this part a little bit. Oh my gosh, look, now I have 3. Okay, I'm going to write a 3 by that. Then I keep track of all the different evidence because sometimes when there's this much, it's hard to keep track of what goes with what. Okay, by linking a number of ancient kingdoms and empires, the Silk Road helped to spread ideas, inventions, and cultures, as well as spices and silk across much of the world. So honestly, if you're going to pick a Silk Road fact, you should pick this one or this one, not 2, because this is not an essay about the Silk Road, right? This is an essay about trade. The Silk Road is important, but it's just one of those ways, or one of the routes that people traded on. It's not every single route that ever existed, right? And so we don't want to make our essay too much about the Silk Road. So if you pick a Silk Road fact, just pick one. Okay, because you don't want your essay to feel like the topic is going on to something else or if it's becoming repetitive. So let's see, 3. I'll say Silk Road helped spread ideas, inventions, cultures, spices, and silk, much of the world. And like I said, I think, I'm going to write 3 again because it's really similar to the other one. So pick which one of the 3 you want instead of doing both. Okay. Many great civilizations developed along this route, including those of Egypt, China, and Rome. So civilization is just a group of people living in a certain place at a certain time, and it's typically bigger than just one city, but not necessarily. It's just a famous, usually a large group of people in one city or multiple cities that share culture and traditions and things of that nature. So I don't think I'm going to use that, although you could include it in one of these other things about Silk Road. But again, if you pick 3 facts and they're all about the Silk Road, you're getting too repetitive. So I'm going to leave it out just for that. Okay, in the 1st century BCE, Rome became the spice trade king when it set up a powerful trade center in Alexandria, Egypt. Aha! Now we've got a different trade route, which I think is interesting because it allows us more variety. So I don't think the year is super duper important. So it's sounding to me like maybe the Silk Road was, more of the Asian equivalent of what this, the trading that was happening in Rome was one big trade center, whereas like the things that were happening over here in Asia was a different trade center, it sounds like. But it looks like the Silk Road did travel over here, but that they were sort of operating different things out of Rome and Asia. Plus, this is a totally different time period anyway. Okay, so we're talking a little later on here. So what's interesting though is they're saying, oh my gosh, at this point, because Rome's so powerful, all the spices from Asia had to come through this center over in, wait, what am I talking about? In Egypt. Oh, okay. I missed the Egypt fact. See, sometimes you have to reread. Told you I'm tired, guys. I'm sorry. Whew. So look. Okay, here's Rome. Here's Egypt. So what they're saying is the spices from over here, like any of the spices coming from different Asian countries, sounds like at the time when Rome was really successful. It set up sort of a trade port here where in order to go through all the way to Rome, they had to stop here. And the way they did that is they were able to probably collect a lot of taxes, I bet, when people went through there. Yep, because see it saying, oh my gosh, because they were forcing people to go through this, that allowed them to control the spice trade. And it added to its financial strength and power. Because they're like, if you want to trade with us, if you want to trade with the big boys, you're going to have to come through Alexandria. And if you don't do that, tough luck. And of course, people are going to do it because they also want part of the power that comes from being friends with somebody as powerful as those that lived in Rome. So they were kind of exploiting the trade a little bit there and getting some money out of it. This would be, so we had 3 up here. I would say this is 4. And, you know, again, you don't want to necessarily write all of these things. You could pick, though, from any of the facts about Rome's trade through Alexandria. You could pick just one of these highlighted sentences from here, or you could kind of combine all of them into one idea. Just don't get too crazy with your run-on. Oh my gosh, well, we definitely have enough information now, but we're right at the end. By this time, spices had become so valuable that only the wealthy people could afford them. When the Roman Emperor Nero lost his wife, he wanted to show the depth of his grief. How? By burning a year's supply of valuable cinnamon. Spices were even used as currency. So that's, you know, like instead of getting paid or instead of money, they were often just using spice. For example, Roman soldiers were often paid in salt instead of money. That's where the word salary comes from, because salary is what you earn, the money you earn. And when an enemy invaded Rome in the year 410, their leader demanded gold, silk, jewels, and 3,000 pounds of peppercorn. Technically, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of business. It's more almost like a war situation here. So I don't know if I really would say that's business. A lot of times war has something to do with business or disputes about business, but we don't really know that. You know, you could mention the salt, paid in salt instead of money, even though it was already a blue fact, or used as currency, only because money is business usually, or money is often power and trade. But these are not as exciting of a choice. Like, you have way better facts. So I honestly wouldn't pick it. However, you could argue that it has something to do with it. Really, I would definitely focus on some of these other ones first. Now, if you are not in Mrs. Yamamoto's group and you're listening to this, you might be confused. Oh, well, where's the other pages? We've shortened it because we're really trying to just get the information for uses in trade business at this point. And this is basically where it ends. If you continue and you look at like that whole thing, honestly, it mostly goes into power the last couple pages. So we just cut it here. So the next step is going to be this. After you've got your highlights in yellow, your job is to think of a big idea sentence. And I think and then of course your evidence. I think because these videos are all kind of long, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chunk it. So this video would be your highlighting your evidence video. And the next one you're going to want to watch is, how do I take this evidence and put it into my little box? Because like I said, you should already have this pew and this pew. You probably don't have this. So that'll be the next video. After you have highlighted, you should have all the blues, all the yellows. You don't have to really do the numbers like I did though. Then we're gonna go into this, okay? So go ahead and ask Mrs. Coteau for your next video after you've highlighted all that stuff, okay?